And we're on. I'm here with Tom Malterre. Seriously, one of my favorite people in this health space, and also just in general. Tom is like such a cool guy. And I get to spend a lot of time hanging out with like the world's best health experts. And here's like one of the brightest ones I ever get to talk to. Oh. You know, so much of what happens in health, nutrition, fitness, it's like fads and trends. And Tom doesn't follow those. He reads things firsthand and draws incredibly insightful conclusions, and he lives this stuff like just to a perfect T. He's got a new book coming out, which I'm really excited about. I've had a chance to look over a bit, and I wanted to have him just talk about some of the concepts in that. So welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Alan. You know, I have to say the feeling's mutual, my friend, and I really enjoy the depth and breadth you go into and looking at the scientific data, but then also to listening to your clients, my friend, because the reality is science can direct us in so many different ways. And until we can actually see those scientific principles alive in front of us in case studies, and we can, you know, prove that either they're correct or incorrect, because you and I have both seen trends in our clients before they ever appear in the research.
Yeah.
So I have to commend you for all your hard work, man. I've been inspired by you many, many times.
You know, so in terms of books, your cookbooks, we've had them all in our practice and use them over the years and just love them. Yeah. And now this is a new one. This is a new direction. So tell me what prompted the Elimination Diet book?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're functional medicine practitioners, right? I mean, we've been trained in this whole system of looking at the gut first, definitely taking into consideration the entire system of life. You know, what's happening outside will be happening inside. And one of the things that we're seeing now, and we have been seeing for, you know, the last decade, is that more and more people are responding negatively to foods. And how I figured this out was, to be honest with you, you know, I'm reading and learning from Joe Pizzorno and Alan Gaby, all the people at the Bastyr campus who are absolutely incredibly intelligent, right? And they have these phenomenal case studies, and they say, look, you know, we're able to help people with arthritis, not with these heavy, you know, TNF-alpha inhibiting medications, but by limiting their intake of certain foods, dairy, and, for example. We're able to help people with migraines by looking at these 10 different foods. We're able to help these people with, you name the condition, and all of a sudden I start seeing these patterns, and they're saying, you know, we can really help these people when we remove certain foods from their diet. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. So in 2004, I was doing my own elimination diet. And this elimination diet was basically a raw food diet. And I was taking out all the grains and everything. And all of a sudden, you know, I didn't even know, Alan, I didn't even know it wasn't normal to have these terrible outbursts of gastric cramping and pain and bouts of diarrhea. And I didn't know that it wasn't normal to be huddled up on the couch for days at a time and just not want to move, just kind of feel like you have this fog over your head, like you can't really put the thoughts together. Like sometimes your memory is super sharp and other times you're like, I don't really recall what I did yesterday. You know, I didn't know that stuff wasn't normal. But when I went on this diet, when I removed all the grains from my life and the dairy simultaneously, like it was like I got this shot of, you know, focus. I had this shot of energy. Like, you know, when I was in those, you know, fetal type positions on the couch, just like wanting to sleep all the time, I had joint pain. That joint pain was gone. Like all of a sudden I was like, wow. And as long as I kept certain foods out, it turns out, you know, all the symptoms came back when I had a whole wheat chapati. I had this healthy burrito wrapped in a chapati, a wheat chapati. All the symptoms came rushing back. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's the food. It's the food, right? So when you experience something like that, when you're living life on a certain level, and then you ramp up that level like exponentially, I had to share it, right? I'm that type of person. You and I are like that. We're givers, right? I mean, we find something and we're like, oh, I got to share. Come check this out. You know, hey, look at the sky. Hey, everybody come out, look at the sky, right? Well, it was like, you know, oh my gosh, I have this like lifting experience for everybody, you know, it's like an epiphany, you know, and you're like, come check this out. So I started telling my family and my friends. And when I was in clinic at Bastyr University, all the clients that would come in, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, you know, you've got your arthritis, you've got your migraines, you should really try this, right? And boom, 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 you know, person after person, whether it was, you know, my niece or my brother or my mother-in-law or whoever it was, right? They got better. And then my clients in the clinic, they got better. And then all of a sudden I started racking up these case studies of, you know, people who had rheumatoid arthritis for 31 years, all of a sudden they're at a 9 out of 10 pain scale, right? Then they go down to a 2 out of 10 pain scale, and they start taking up yoga and going dancing with their wife. And, I have these people who have this terrible carpal tunnel or trigger finger, right? And all of a sudden, boom, that's gone. And they feel like they're 20 years younger. And so I felt like I had this magical gift, right? But it wasn't a gift. I mean, goodness, Jeff Bland and Alan Gaby and Joe Pizzorno have been telling us about it for decades. They've been telling us about it forever. And they're like, hey, by the way, look at food sensitivity, by the way. But I didn't believe it until I felt it myself, until I saw it hundreds upon hundreds and now thousands of times in front of me. And then I just go, oh, well, the world has to know about this. And no one had published a book on the elimination diet. No one has published a book on the elimination diet. There's these little workbooks and these little things. But, no advanced functional medicine practitioner that I know of has put a book out that's called The Elimination Diet. So here you go. This is the book.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of big conditions like the arthritis, the headaches. What are some other big things you think are strongly affected by these reactions?
Oh, sure. Migraines are, 90+% efficacy. I mean, it's phenomenal. Of course, you can add in some supplementation. You can do some riboflavin, magnesium, other things as well. But my gosh, the dietary intervention is phenomenal for migraines. Skin disorders, Alan, skin disorders. When someone's gut calms down, when they're not irritating their gut with, terrible food reactions, whatnot, the skin calms down a lot. But what I love, because, I have 5 children and everything, and I see these people come into my practice and they say, well, what can I do for my son's autism? Or what can I do for ADD, ADHD? The elimination diet is phenomenal for mood disorders. I don't know if you recall Peter Green shocking us all in New England Journal of Medicine when he came out a while back and said 50% of gluten-associated reactions are extraintestinal. They happen outside of the intestines. And the prime symptom in children is behavioral disorders. So you kind of go, oh, you're kidding me. So, we're on these heavy medications, or we're doing lots of intervention in school, and we're falling behind, and we're frustrated, and the child is tearing apart our houseplants. And you can change the diet and change all these behaviors. It's absolutely amazing. But it's not just in kids. Not at all. You can have adults with anxiety and depressive disorders, atypical bipolar disorder, and they will come off their meds, Alan. They come off the meds. Like, I don't recommend you come off your meds, mind you, but what happens is you go on the diet, the symptoms become so much better, then the doctors go do a reevaluation and they say, I don't know if these are necessary anymore. I mean, it's so wonderful, right?
It's really cool.
Simplest intervention, you just change some of your food, right? So that's another one. Mood, skin, headaches, behavioral disorders. I mean, those are probably the big ones.
Okay.
But I have not really seen a condition that has inflammation behind it that doesn't get better on elimination diet.
And that's a big part of so many chronic diseases. That's one of the big unifying theories in medicine, right?
Right. It's true.
So if you were to say like a percent of the population that could be having some of these reactions on an ongoing basis, what would you think?
Well, just with the elimination diet alone, having significant differences. Okay, so people come in to see me and they have an illness, right? They're complaining about something. If they're not, they don't take the time, money, and energy to come see me, right? But when somebody has an inflammatory disorder and they're in my clinical practice, if I put them on the elimination diet, 80% get better just from the diet alone.
Wow.
Just from the diet alone. 80%. So you kind of say, whoa, how's that even possible, right? I mean, why wouldn't everybody be talking about this intervention? And that's my question out to the general populace. Why isn't everybody talking about this? But I have to say, Alan, I think they are. I think they don't know that they're talking about it, but a lot of the successful diet programs out there, a lot of the autoimmune paleo, the paleo diets, what are they? They're in essence modified elimination diets.
Sure.
You're eliminating the most irritant foods that we know of in the United States population. They'll take out the dairy, they'll take out the gluten, they'll take out in autoimmune paleo, nightshades and nuts and other things that can stimulate immune cell response. And so everybody says, oh, the paleo diet is the answer, or autoimmune paleo, whatever the case is. Maybe it's because these people are finding out which foods don't work well in their system.
So you give a list of some foods to avoid in the book. Are there particular ones you feel are best for someone to focus on, or?
Well, it would depend on that particular person, but in general, gluten, dairy, eggs, yeast, corn, soy are some of the top reactive substances. If you've got a person who has joint pain, I'm considering nightshades. There are certain symptoms that fit with certain foods. I mean, this. Okay, watch. A kid with constipation and a parent with sinus congestion, what food do you think of?
Dairy comes up.
You don't even hesitate. You don't even hesitate. See, this is the thing about functional medicine practitioners. We know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the literature and you say, well, 40% of children who are consuming cow's milk proteins will have a cow's milk enteropathy. They will upset their intestinal tract so severely that they'll end up with occult intestinal bleeding. They'll have blood in the stools when they consume dairy. And like, why every pediatric practitioner isn't looking for constipation or sinus congestion or blood in the stools with dairy doesn't make any sense, because the literature is extremely clear. You know, and thankfully I got a chance to go through historical literature to do this Elimination Diet book. And I got to see, you know, Dr. Cook, and I got to see, you know, all these different published an entire book on the Elimination Diet back in the early 1900s, right?
Wow.
And then you go way back and you go in the 1700s and you start seeing trends. And a lot of the people who are looking at allergy and whatnot, they were all doing elimination diets, but they weren't saying they were limited to IgE-mediated reactions. You don't have to have the hives. You don't have to have the anaphylaxis. They were looking at gastrointestinal issues. They were looking at mood issues and food. You go way back, 790 AD, and you start getting into Hippocrates' work, and he was mentioning some things like, you know, well, some people find strength from dairy products and other people find tremendous illness, as if he saw portions of the population had food sensitivities, you know? So it's amazing. I mean, it's been around forever.
And that's the thing. There's this huge schism still, and there's this allergy immunology world that still denies a lot of this and still argues that a lot of this is not real.
Ooh, it's so true, right? And I find myself doing this thing where you butt heads, right? I mean, you have these conventionally trained practitioners, and they say, oh, I can't believe that, you know, this person put you on this diet. And well, sure, your laboratory analysis are all normal now for your autoimmune disease, and we're no longer going to give you the diagnosis of MS. But we're not thinking that it was actually the diet changes that did it. We think it was something else. In fact, let's send you over. I had this one client, I kid you not. Well, let's send you over. The neurologist was like, oh, come on. You know, she had severe atypical bipolar disorder. She had irritable bowel. You know, she had all these things, sleep apnea. She had asthma, all these conditions going on simultaneously. And she, after 12 days on the elimination diet, her chronic fatigue like changed so much that no one was like believing what had happened, right? They're like, how is this even possible? So the neurologist was like, at the end of, I don't know, gosh, where we were at, 6 months. I think it was 6 months. And she had lost 26 pounds or something. And she was just phenomenal. She was coming off of all meds. All the specialists were like, well, I don't know if I need to see you anymore. And this brain doc was like, oh no, couldn't be the diet. Couldn't be the diet. Let's send you down to the Mayo Clinic. Let's get a $20,000 workup and let's see if we can figure out, you know. So he sends all of her current laboratory analysis down to Mayo and says, you know, I want to get this client in there and we'll check her out and whatever. They came back and said, well, we're not going to see her. She doesn't have any disease. We're looking at her labs and we don't see any disease. You know what I mean? So it's like you get to a point where you let the results speak for themselves. But we have to come to another part then, Alan, which is most people who go on an elimination diet don't succeed. And here's why. They don't truly go on an elimination diet.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So yeah, 99+% of the people that I do intake evaluation on, I can find hidden sources, corn, soy, gluten in their intake, whether it's a pharmaceutical that they're taking, a supplement that they are taking, whether it is food that they are consuming that they don't understand may be cross-contaminated. I mean, part of the reason autoimmune paleo and paleo diets are so amazing is because most people don't understand. If you're going to avoid gluten, you cannot eat most grains. You can't. You can't do sorghum. You can't do buckwheat. You can't do millet. Oftentimes, these are produced in facilities, manufactured in facilities. If you're going to do a flour and it's not in a gluten-dedicated facility, there will be cross-contamination. Tricia Thompson, a very well-known RD, has been publishing on this for over a decade with oat cross-contamination, and now with standard flours of sorghum, millet, buckwheat, others. So you kind of say, oh, all right, unintentional cross-contamination is what happens quite frequently on these elimination diets. So you read data, and you know the data will be all over the place. They'll say, oh yeah, we've seen autism, gluten-free, casein-free diets are incredibly effective in this cohort, but in this other one, they're not effective at all. And then you start looking at the methods, right? And you say, oh, come on. I know that the food they're consuming there is cross-contaminated. Why doesn't the person who's doing the study know this, right?
Yeah.
You just observe over time. You just observe. And now we know there's this whole population, right, of refractory celiac patients. Did you see those articles? It's amazing. They'll say, well, we don't know why these people aren't responding well to their gluten-free diet, but we're going to put them on a lamb, rice-based vegetable diet for a while and see what happens. And all of a sudden, their symptoms go away because they were getting cross-contamination. So it's just a matter of doing it and doing it well. So that's the biggest barrier in this situation.
And it can be done well. If someone gets some proper guidance and proper perspectives, they can really see through those types of issues and avoid those hidden sources.
Yes, absolutely. And the interesting thing was, I wish, you know how I am, Alan. I'm a people guy, right? So I love to talk to people. I love to hang out with people. I love to call them and say how are you doing on this program? What's going on? How can I help you? It drove my wife nuts over the years because I'd come home late and I'd call her and say, I'm going to be at the office a little longer. And she's like, well, why? And I was like, I got to run. And I would take groups of my clients over to the local co-op. And I would walk them through the store and I would say, okay, this food is probably cross-contaminated. You got to make sure you get and I do these grocery shopping tours, right? And then I would coach people on all the things I wanted them to have in their kitchen. Make sure you get a high-powered blender, whatever. I couldn't do that in the book, right? I gave the kitchen essentials. I gave a lot of the information. I gave, the details, but I couldn't communicate, right? So what I've done is I put together an online support program where you actually get to see me. I go on and I do webinars with you and I talk to you about the little, tips and tricks that will bring you that success you're looking for. My wife gives you these 24 cooking videos so you can feel really comfortable in the kitchen. She's beautiful and she's like one of the most eloquent chefs she's a cook, whole foods cook who's exponentially better than anybody I've ever seen at adapting any recipe at all to be elimination diet friendly. So we give you those cooking instruction videos. And then I give these little audio MP3 files. I had to do this. That just you open up on a daily basis, okay, the week before you start your program, right? You hear me talking to you saying, oh my gosh, I bet you have a little, butterflies in your stomach. And these are the things you're thinking and here's what you need to do right now. And, go sprout some broccoli sprouts right now. And let's get your fermented vegetables started. And let's make sure you're taking some Epsom salts baths when you're feeling stressed out, right? And then on day one, I say, all right, let's do this. Here we go. Let's buckle down, let's get these broths going. And so I talk to you the entire time, I give you these little coaching things because I had to do it. I can't just say, all right, go and let go. I'm one of those connective, emotional people who wants to have that interaction. Sure. So now people can come on the webinars and they can ask me questions and everything. So yeah, we put together the support program just for that reason, because we know, right? A lot of people.
How do we get access to this stuff? How do we find this?
Yeah, well, it's on our site, So you come in and you go on our homepage and you just log in and we'll give you some information about who we are, what we do, where the essence of disease is. And then we'll send you information about, the book, about the program. It's incredible. WholeLifeNutrition.net. It's super easy to get there. And really,
you'll have some links I can share for people. And
oh, absolutely. Of course.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Yes. But yeah, the reality is, I want people to succeed. I mean, really, Alan, the whole reason you and I are here, the whole reason is because we know that there's a lot of unnecessary suffering out there. And we know how good life can be. And it gets lonely when you're the only person who's happy and you're the only person who's whistling. And you want people to share life at that level with you, So you're like, oh, I want my kids to have friends that are super fun and happy. I want my friends and neighbors. I want everybody that I talk to and run into the street. I want more people whistling. That's my goal, Alan. Do you remember, man? Do you remember? I mean, go back just, 20 years ago. I mean, you could literally walk down the street and you could hear people whistling. I mean, my grandpas, they used to whistle all the time. Do you hear that anymore? I just don't.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I want more of that. And I think it's partially because people just don't feel good. They're not having this welling up of exuberant energy where they can just express it. And I think that's what whistling is. I think it's an expression of joy.
That is awesome. Well, I'm so excited for this, and I can't wait to share this with everyone. This is going to be just total life-changing, transformative, and incredible.
That's the plan, man. That's the plan. That's why we did it.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Tom. I know you're busy getting ready for this, and I'll get this information out and look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Alan. Thank you so much for taking the time. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.